Fresh off a superb 2009, Randy Orton's 2010 was destined to continue his ongoing momentum as the Viper. He had developed into the coolest character in WWE, and Orton's intentions were clear. He wanted titles, but getting to that point brought him to cruel measures. Orton's dastardly actions left a black mark on just about everybody he touched. Triple H, his family was tortured and disgraced, but in the end, he failed to stop the momentum of the Viper. John Cena, he may have come out of it all proud, but getting to that point was hell. His father was kicked into oblivion, he was taken out and had to recover for 3 months and was constantly screwed over. But once Cena put a stop to the legend killer, he seemed to mellow out. And a mellowed out Randy Orton's still crazy. Even more wild than the entire roster, that's one thing for sure. So where did he go from here? He set his sights on the biggest prize but suffered some setbacks caused by his own guys. This allowed Orton to pivot from a dastardly heel to a loved anti-hero. In other terms, he was now a face. The original plan called for Ted DiBiase to turn against Orton, but he didn't have the trust, and in addition, the crowds were loving Randy Orton. Even as a kid, around this time period, I started rooting for him despite being a heel. I knew where they were going with this. There was no way in hell that this guy was going to continue being a heel with the crowd loving him. In 2010, me would never ever cheer for a heel. I hated them all. But with Randy Orton, it was different. He made easy work of them at WrestleMania to the surprise of nobody, and even as a kid, this match was super predictable. Rhodes and DiBiase lost because they couldn't measure to the Viper. Rhodes and DiBiase most importantly lost to Orton because they don't have Surfshark VPN. With my personal promo code WP, you can enjoy a plethora of benefits. The reason why a VPN is important is simple. It helps make your day easier on many fronts. Surfshark in particular helps you surf on the internet without a worry of somebody stealing your data. In this day, you can never be sure of what somebody's capable of, so having that as a feature is great. Covering your data is always a great thing, but Surfshark has more to offer. My personal favorite perk is the ability to watch the content that I like. The WWE Network is not available in the US, and it's unfortunate, but that's where Surfshark comes in. Now, I can watch on a platform I'm familiar with and enjoy the content, and it's not just that network that helps me. Sometimes I want to watch a movie. Rush Hour, one of the most iconic comedy movies. I wanted to watch it the other day. Problem is, it's not available here. All I gotta do is hop on a Surfshark, and with one click, I'm in Spain. And most importantly, Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker are on my screen. With over 15 countries at your disposal and multitude of ways to protect yourself on the internet, Surfshark is essential. Click my link in the description box or scan the QR code on the screen and use my promo code WP for 3 months free and 83% off. By the way, it has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so what are you waiting for? On the March 29th, 2010 episode of Raw, Randy Orton was set to team up with a new champion, John Cena, to face Jack Swagger and Batista. Cena chose him as the mystery partner, and Batista was on the verge of throwing a fit. Orton's momentum drove the team to victory, and he seemed primed for a huge push, especially because nobody knew where WWE was heading post-WrestleMania with Triple H and Shawn Michaels leaving. At the time, Jack Swagger cashed in Money in the Bank to win the World Heavyweight Championship, which meant he was now an official member of SmackDown. He gave his farewell on Raw the following week, claiming he left because nobody could beat him, but John Cena wanted to put that claim to the test. When Randy Orton heard this, he was more than eager to have the match. Then Showmiz interrupted David Otunga, who was running Raw with a one-day haircut, made the All-American go one-on-one with the Apex Predator. They have the match, and it doesn't end so well for the new champion, who fell short, and with this, he unknowingly put Orton's name in the hat for a title shot, despite this being a SmackDown title. Out of everyone to confirm the match, it was David Hasselhoff, 2010 WWE. The match was Extreme Rules, and Randy Orton saw it as his opening. The stipulation plays into his favor, and he even said that the Money in the Bank was the worst case scenario for Jack Swagger, because he has to face him now. Later that night, he almost beat his Evolution brother when the champion interfered and dropped him with a gut-wrench powerbomb, and Swagger was looking good. So far, he was looking strong as champion, but that's a different story. After the volcano eruption in Iceland, the Raw roster was left stranded in Europe. So all you saw from Orton was him saying this and that about Swagger at Extreme Rules. It's not worth mentioning, otherwise I would have talked about it right now. There was not much of a build for the match. It was more about Jack Swagger's story than Randy Orton's. He was the guy who had a lot to lose and was the fresh new face. The match itself, though, was very solid, but when you watch it, it's clear why nobody talks about it. There's just not much to say, it's inoffensive. Last time I visited this match was in this video. Swagger managed to retain, it's technically clean, but Orton had the last laugh with the RKO, which meant the feud was over. It was literally a 1-month feud to get Jack Swagger off of Raw and onto SmackDown and move on to other things. So where did Randy Orton go from here? The WWE title. The next night on Raw, Randy Orton and Sheamus laid their claims to the WWE Championship. This got them a triple threat match, which was heading towards an Orton victory when from out of nowhere, Edge interfered and dropped the Apex Predator, costing him the title. This was the start of his heel turn, which was odd because only 3 months earlier, he returned as a face and was being cheered. With that said, Edge refused to give the fans an explanation initially. He wanted to bring back Rated R in this PG era, and his guest for the cutting edge the following week was Randy Orton. At least initially, because Wayne Brady came out and Edge made him the guest host. He wanted to feel like a wrestler, and Randy Orton was like, say no more. Orton had a disturbed, menacing look on his face, and Brady was clearly unaware of what he was dealing with. He wanted to greet him, and boom, RKO. Orton's eyes were dead set on Edge, who was quite hesitant with his movement, and he told him that last week was a wrong case of wrong person at the wrong time. And he made mention of the last time Orton appeared on the cutting edge, teasing a rated RKO reunion. His verbal language here was very similar to last time, giving him an idea of where this partnership could go. After no answer, Edge said that spearing him is a good thing and expressed disappointment and anger with the fans refusing to accept him. Even though he did right, he was doing all the right things, they didn't care, yet Randy Orton, a selfish person, has the entire crowd by his side. He complained about everything being unfair to him and told Orton to listen. He told him, "You will join me," and promised that if he doesn't, that spear from last week was only the tip of the iceberg. Edge was losing his mind over the lack of words from Orton, and he wanted to go for the RKO. Nope. But neither was a spear because Orton bounced back. Very good segment here. Edge finally explained deeply why he played the fans. He wanted their love and admiration, but felt that they weren't reciprocating enough. Good stuff. Orton finally addressed his actions, saying he believes Edge saw him as a threat, and teaming up with him was a way of keeping Orton in control. All of a sudden, Meatloaf interrupted. 2010 WWE, guys. He was talking the talk and got RKO'd for it. It's so hilarious how the tone from dark and serious with Orton discussing Edge's evil plans, and we have this. The Rated R Superstar, though, came out after this and mentioned Orton's history of assaulting guest hosts and said that there needs to be a permanent GM here. He was, of course, referring to Vicky Guerrero. And the fans were booing hard. She had more heat than a frying pan. She promised to reprimand him, and Orton was like, "Why don't you come down and reprimand me right now?" Edge quickly got involved before Vicky revealed that the Apex Predator will face Edge and a mystery partner. That turned out to be Ted DiBiase, and the expectation Edge and Vicky had for this one was not met, because Orton won the handicap match, and to make matters worse, he RKO'd Edge afterwards. With Over the Limit on the horizon, both men received the opportunity to choose the other's opponent. Randy Orton chose Christian and left Edge feeling annoyed, and the Rated R Superstar had to fight like hell to get the victory, but even then, it was only in the beginning. Randy Orton expressed confusion over Edge's match, saying he didn't choose Christian. And when Edge heard the gong, he knew he was finished. So he purposefully lost, and even then took a chokeslam. And Randy Orton, meanwhile, had to go one-on-one with the World Heavyweight Champion, Jack Swagger. This was also when he looked naked with the lack of wrist tape, but that's not the point. For this one, Edge interfered and dropped the Apex Predator with a spear, signaling what's to come Over the Limit. Unfortunately, this match was cursed. It was very disappointing, and to top it all off, Randy Orton suffered a shoulder injury, so they had to pivot the finish to a double countout. Orton's injury looked really bad initially, but it was all good for Raw the next night. He was announced for the Fatal 4-Way title match at the namesake pay-per-view, and the shoulder injury was used as a storyline from here on. Edge and Orton were set to face off in a tag team main event, and Edge decided, you know what, I'm gonna go after that arm. He did just that, and John Cena had to find a replacement. The Viper was still selling the injury on TV and even had a match with his arm in a sling against Edge. It was a one-arm tied behind your back situation, but Edge ended up getting himself DQ'd. They brawl, Edge brings in a chair and inflicts even more damage to the already injured shoulder. The Viper's status was not in any way doubtful, and he had his issues, but promised to wrestle in the main event and at Fatal 4-Way. He did just that over here, but the main event was marred in controversy involving the Nexus and Bret Hart. But as for Fatal 4-Way, good match. The story was about Nexus and John Cena more so than Randy Orton and the others. Sheamus managed to steal it in the end, but it wasn't all about him. As I said, it was about the Nexus destroying the other guys. Edge and Orton's feud, though, was far from over. Miz got involved as well the next night on Raw, and Edge used this to his advantage, spearing the Viper. He then grabbed the mic and said that the real fun begins now. Was he lying? Damn right. You see, the Money in the Bank was coming up, and that meant the briefcase was prioritized over the feud. The build was basic multi-man stuff. Orton lifted the briefcase at one point, but there was something memorable to come from this build-up. It was the whole Evan Bourne thing. You see, after a tag team match, Randy Orton decided to RKO his tag team partner, Evan Bourne, showing that he's still untrustworthy despite his slight change of character. This leads me to the next event. Edge and Orton finally had the rematch here. It was a bit better than Over the Limit, but that's not saying much. As time went on and picked up and the fans were fully behind it, but since this was 2010 WWE, Chris Jericho interfered and Edge went for the Edge-O-Matic to win it. Surprising because Edge usually didn't win with the move at the time, but whatever. Jericho then hits the code breaker before walking into the RKO. Evan Bourne suddenly runs in and drops the Viper with a kick before going up to the top rope, and it seemed a bit far, but he didn't care. And Orton's like, hold my beer, and connects with an amazing mid-air RKO in the crowd. Michael Cole, everyone was going crazy, and it's still talked about to this very day because of how ridiculous, how impeccable Randy Orton's timing was to catch Evan Bourne with a shooting star. It was just out of this world. It looked so out of place in 2010 WWE. Money in the Bank proved to be unsuccessful for Randy Orton. He had quite the performance but fell short to The Miz, who stole it from right underneath him. But it wasn't all bad for him, because from here on, it was only up. He won the #1 Contenders Triple Threat match to earn an opportunity to face Sheamus for the title at SummerSlam. He was by far the most liked wrestler, probably the most popular on the entire roster. His intentions were unpredictable, and he always felt like he was up to something. Sheamus got to witness the Apex Predator firsthand, and when trying to take advantage of this, took an RKO. So The Miz was ready to cash in. He comes in with the briefcase, about to win a title win, boom, RKO. Crowd goes insane as always, and all they needed to do now is give him the title, because Orton was ready for it. His face run was a success up to this point. Sheamus promised to retaliate, saying he's leaving Orton the same way he left Triple H, but the Viper wasn't worried, saying Sheamus should focus on watching his match with The Miz. He promised to beat him so badly that he'll be in no shape to cash in the briefcase. The champion did watch the match from a distance and didn't budge from his place after seeing Orton make work of The Miz. The word around was that Sheamus was scared, and he confirmed these rumors, saying he was scared. Scared of what he's gonna do to Orton himself. He said that if anyone thinks he's taking the title, you better think otherwise, and showed a clip of himself. Sheamus showed zero fear and even called out Randy Orton to tell him face to face. The Viper here did not hesitate. He called him a liar for his claims and said that he had the opportunity to prove that he should be taken serious. And he's like, everybody takes me serious, fella. For Orton, it was a blown opportunity. In his eyes, he thought Sheamus blew it here. He's going to do the very same thing at SummerSlam when he loses the title. He also made sure to mention that Sheamus never beat him, and he denied this claim, saying John Cena and Triple H looked him in the eye. He said that just like Cena, he goes to the back of the line. Orton was very certain of his chances at SummerSlam, and acknowledged that if Sheamus wants to redeem himself, then do it now. And there's the notification. Michael Cole revealed that if somebody interferes in the title match at SummerSlam, they'll be suspended indefinitely. And he said that Orton will get no rematch if he loses. He also encouraged Sheamus to do something. He didn't, and Orton took advantage. Nonetheless, Sheamus fought back, only to fall in the same position that many had for years. And because of Orton's hesitancy and yearning of championship gold, he didn't do it. The match at SummerSlam was pretty forgettable. It does not stand out, barring two things on this show. The event itself is disappointing. That doesn't mean the match is bad, because it was far from that, but it just doesn't stand out. Orton displayed such a high level of resiliency that he left Sheamus speechless. Everything he would throw at him, he would kick out. And even when he connected with a brogue kick, it still wasn't enough. So Sheamus brought in a chair. He pushed the ref and got DQ'd, realizing, hey, I retained the title. He tried to attack afterwards, but the fury of Randy Orton was far too much, and he RKO'd him on the announce table. Orton was driven by his hatred of Sheamus and championship gold, so whoever crossed his path would endure the brunt of it. He made Justin Gabriel look like a jobber the next time before Sheamus ran in. So he focused on the champion and brawled in the crowd. And once he realized he lost by countout, he dropped Gabriel with an RKO before taking out Sheamus, signaling his intentions. So in an effort to combat this almost unstoppable momentum, Sheamus complained about him, saying he doesn't deserve a title shot. He even wanted Orton locked up for his actions. The anonymous Raw GM saw things in the same way as Sheamus and wanted to treat him like a champion. So he brought out a throne and told him that he could choose any opponent. Of course, Randy Orton won his match, but that was absolutely irrelevant to the champion. His decision was based on complacency. It was a storyline, a shrewd idea, very intelligent. For one, he wanted the match tonight instead of Night of Champions and gave the title match to Zack Ryder. He came out appreciating the opportunity but said that Sheamus made the biggest mistake of his life. That promo ended up being longer than the match, and it was like 8 seconds. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Sheamus was all happy, saying he could take the night off at the pay-per-view because of WWE's rules and regulations, but Wade Barrett wasn't interested in any of this nonsense and invoked his title shot, which he received from winning NXT. Barrett's request was accepted, but the match was a 6-pack challenge. Chris Jericho, Randy Orton, Edge, and John Cena. They locked their eyes on him before Sheamus shoved Barrett and gave him a taste of his own medicine. Jericho with the code breaker, Edge with the spear, Cena with the AA, and Orton with the RKO. Ahead of the pay-per-view, the Viper got himself a match against the leader of Nexus, and the winner faces John Cena on Raw Roulette. He had a score to settle after his team lost to Nexus on Raw 900, so that's why they had the match. As expected, the match had some drama. Darren Young interfered and cost Barrett the match was won, but the post-match action was far more chaotic. Edge and Jericho ran in there, and the Viper, despite all of this action, this drama unfolding, he looked untouchable. John Cena had a confrontation with his next opponent, and the question was, can he stop the momentum? When they spun the wheel for the match, it landed on Table's match, and for Cena, he got flashbacks to the time he lost to Sheamus, but he felt this was different. He's like, new season of Raw, fresh start. Man, Raw in 2010 was crazy. We had Chad Johnson or Chad Ocho Cinco over here doing some introductions. It's a whole different world compared to current day WWE. This was the first match Cena and Orton had since December of 2009. There were two different things about this one though. Orton was a face, and it was a tables match. First Cena and Orton match, good. It's not like their matches aren't good, it's just the expectation is high, especially because of the perception WWE has of the feud. But, good tables match. There's a lot of drama since it was the go-home show of the pay-per-view. Everyone who interfered had a great chance of going through a table, and most of them did. Then, of course, there was that ending with Orton dropping Cena through the table with an RKO counter to the Attitude Adjustment. I mean, at this point, it was clear as day he was going to be champion. It wasn't Sheamus, and it certainly wasn't going to be Purple Man. The match in All Champions was good. It wasn't out of this world, and I think the setting and the match type were memorable, but the action wasn't. Nonetheless, the favorite Randy Orton fought through hell. He took out Jericho with ease initially, but as the match went on and on, his chances decreased, especially as Nexus interfered. But he managed to steer clear only to run into a bro kick. Despite this, he kicked out and rebounded with an RKO to win the WWE Championship. The face run that Orton had been anticipating in 2005 had finally come true. And it was well deserved because, as I said, Randy Orton was the most over babyface at the time. I thought I was cool for supporting Randy Orton over John Cena, who I just randomly hated because the fans hated at the time. The next night on Raw, Sheamus ruined Orton's moment and whined about having the title stolen from him. The champion was called pathetic, and he was gracious to return the favor, calling Sheamus pathetic for never beating him. But despite all this, he told Sheamus to get his rematch quick, otherwise complaining to his face will get him a punt to the face. The Celtic Warrior saw through all of this and found it laughable that Orton would intimidate him and even threaten to kick his head. This threat was welcomed by the champion, and this is when the anonymous GM interrupted. They announced that the title match will be inside Hell in a Cell, and Sheamus was happy, an environment he wasn't all too familiar with, yet he was comfortable, especially after taking out Triple H. Hell, he even told Orton to give him his gold now. The champion thought he was on crack, and he questioned his honor and asked him to hand the title. Orton, though, reminded him that he wasn't an honorable man, and would even RKO his grandma to keep this title. Not even Sheamus' grandma, just to see the look on her face. Nonetheless, he handed him the title and hit an RKO. The build for the match at Hell in a Cell couldn't have been strong because of the 2-week length, but they made the most out of it. Why? Because Randy Orton flat out took Chris Jericho and wrote him off the show with a brutal punt. It showed that Orton, who hadn't channeled into that zone, could do it in an instant. The last time he punted somebody was long ago, and like that, Chris Jericho was gone. He was on hiatus again. And Sheamus was finally struck with fear. He finally realized what he was going up against inside that cell. Sheamus' tough guy image was going to be put to the test. Ever since he burst onto the scene, he constantly reminded everybody of his reputation and intelligently chose the correct moments to illustrate this. The match itself was solid. Of course, as intense as this feud was, it would not need a Hell in a Cell in another era. But this is when WWE brought the pay-per-view. Another thing to mention is that this match did not use much of Hell in a Cell. It was a full-on fight with very little involvement of the cell. There was this funny part where Sheamus hit the backbreaker on top of the steps and basically accomplished nothing. The challenger mostly focused on the champion's ribs and made a lot of progress. Orton had that vicious streak, but in some ways he took a backseat to Sheamus' mean streak, who proved he belonged inside the cell. Ultimately, Orton's RKO on top of the steps was decisive, and unlike Sheamus, he actually connected with a move on the steps. And that was enough for the victory. Good match. It didn't need Hell in a Cell because they used it as background, basically. The fight was mostly inside the ring, and it gave off a different style to Hell in a Cell. They didn't really need it. So where did he go from here? Wade Barrett. Barrett's contributions running Nexus eventually brought him to the WWE Championship. The main story, though, wasn't Barrett and Orton. It was more about Cena's involvement with the faction, and Orton threatened to punt him if he got in his business. Nexus also imposed their authority and tried to take advantage of Cena to prevent him from saving Orton during this attack, and even threatened to fire him if he didn't win the title. At the time, it seemed clear as day that Barrett's time was coming. He had the main character of Raw on a leash and was constantly looking strong. This match, though, the bragging rights match, is very dry. It was dull on many fronts. The story didn't benefit Orton, the action was forgettable, and once it came to an end after the Nexus interference and John Cena drama, it was relieving. Of course, the final parts of the match weren't nice, but that's basic. The point of the story here is that Cena got in Orton's business, cost him the match, but also saved his job, so Orton RKO'd him. The champion was the third wheel in his own title reign, which is crazy, because he wasn't no 2008 CM Punk, he was the most popular wrestler on the roster. And because of his attack on Cena, it meant they faced off again the next night. Except this time, John Cena had to fight for Barrett's option of a special referee. The match ended by DQ, meaning Cena won, and the leader of the Nexus wasted no time telling Cena that if he doesn't win the title at Survivor Series, Cena will be fired on the spot. However, Barrett winning the title means he's relieved of any duties relating to the Nexus. It was a no-win situation for the 10-time champion. For Orton, he was feeling the possibility of being wronged by John Cena, so this brought him out. He mentioned the tough situation he was in and was clearly conflicted. And the champion saw this as a sign of being screwed and said that if he does get screwed, Cena will be the biggest phony in WWE. Hustle, loyalty, and respect, especially respect, mean nothing, and he disobeys every champion, including himself, John Cena. He pressed him about being Wade Barrett's boy, and Cena went off on how Barrett runs things. He even went as far as to say that Barrett had the skills to win the title alone, but he won't. And there he was, the leader of the Nexus. He knew what kind of control he had over Cena and made mention of the stipulation. John Cena told me that he's not going to leave quietly, and regardless of the result, he's going to beat his ass after the match. Orton got involved and told Barrett he's going to beat him so badly that his stooge, Cena, is going to have to count to 10. Just as the brawl was about to begin, the anonymous Raw GM interrupts. Since they like drama, Cena's made the special referee for a tag team match involving Barrett and Orton. That match gave everyone a preview of Survivor Series as Barrett was on the losing end. Referee John Cena was back the following week to officiate a 10-man tag team match. Randy Orton, R-Truth, Daniel Bryan, Mark Henry, and The Miz faced the Nexus. Miz's briefcase was more broken than WWE 2K20 here. Actually, that's wrong. But Nexus used some devious tactics behind Cena's eyes to win the match, and Barrett acted like he accomplished a title victory as the group lifted him up. Orton was slowly getting more and more worried about Survivor Series and came to the conclusion that he should punch Cena in the face to prevent himself from getting screwed. The Viper was incensed and straight up brawled with Cena later that night, and his opportunity to punt him wasn't even close to happening here. So the anonymous GM wanted them to feature on Piper's Pit. Orton made a late appearance and saved the best for last. This image clearly illustrates what he was up against, as Barrett basically forced Cena to be an outright Nexus member with the t-shirt, with his allegiance, all that. He once again reiterated his statement from earlier and said that he thought of a better option, and he went after Barrett. Orton followed up with a failed punt attempt on Cena and took the FU. Barrett's all proud when he takes one as well. Something had to give with this match. It kind of reminds me of Stone Cold and The Undertaker at Fully Loaded in 1999, except it was obvious John Cena wouldn't go away for a long time. The match was basic, action isn't memorable, and it wasn't expected to be because the main story is that of John Cena keeping his job and screwing Orton, or fired by doing the right thing. Barrett's ego cost him as Cena retaliated, leading to an RKO and the victory. It had finally set in for both men that Cena was indeed gone, and then they cleared the ring of Nexus. Cena gives Orton the belt and gets a send-off like he's going away to TNA or something. Despite this, he was on most of the show giving his goodbyes the next night, and this was after the anonymous Raw GM revealed that Barrett had a rematch for the title. The Nexus took advantage and injured Orton, and they left him limping right before the match. The injury left him doubtful for the match, but he was going to tough it out. Barrett immediately went after the leg and inflicted additional damage. The Viper was at his most vulnerable when from out of nowhere, Cena runs in, FUs Barrett, and runs away before Orton hits the RKO to retain the title. Fans go crazy when all of a sudden you hear, "Awesome." Orton basically realized that he was done. Title reign, it was a nice one, but it's going to come to an end. Miz was 100%. No injuries, no disadvantage, and like a vulture, he took advantage of the injury and went to work. Even then, Orton still had some fight in him, and Miz was starting to realize that this was no easy match. He was up against the Viper, the Apex Predator, the WWE Champion. As Orton goes to the RKO, gets countered into the skull-crushing finale. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Iconic image. Miz was now WWE Champion. He had worked very hard in 2010, was getting noticed week after week slowly, and it was bound to happen. You know, if you watched WWE 2010, it was bound to happen. You were expecting the Miz to cash in successfully because he was, one, the guy they invested in the most, and two, he was one of the best talkers on the roster. So despite his limited skills, he had charisma and could talk on the mic, so WWE thought, you know what, let's push him. Okay, this is where I'm going to stop the video. I actually thought about continuing with the Miz and CM Punk feuds, but I already did them in this video, so you can go check those out. But overall, Randy Orton here was very, very over. He was arguably at his most popular as a babyface. His storylines just happened. You know, they weren't great. They weren't amazing. They were nothing like that. They just happened. The Edge story had some potential to it, but it really didn't fulfill the expectation that you would think of when hearing Edge and Randy Orton. His feud with Sheamus was a way of giving him the title, which he deserved. As he was, as I said, most over babyface on Raw. He was very popular. He had every fan on his side. Well, for the most part, I believe. And overall, I feel like people forget just how over Randy Orton was. So I decided to make this video. I was like, you know what? Let's talk about the time when Randy Orton was at his most popular, arguably. This guy was getting a ridiculous reception on a weekly basis because he was basically the PG era version of Stone Cold. He was unpredictable. He was crazy. He did whatever he wanted to do and didn't care if it was a babyface, a heel, whoever was by his side. He didn't care if he would backstab them, attack them, RKO them, whatever. If it meant he'd get a slight advantage or some title, he would do it. So yeah. Alright, what do you guys think of Randy Orton's run? Please comment down below, and that's for this video. Make sure you hit the punt on the like button or perhaps the RKO on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.